One of the largest things that I always saw as such a hurdle, I don't see it as much anymore, is just opening up my phone and calling a student, which is funny because I think students probably feel the same way, right? Somebody brand new is calling them. So that was one of the things that I absolutely struggled with early on. And it took me probably 2, 3, 4 years in order to be able to just be like, it's okay. I can pick up the phone, I can dial a random number, and I can have a conversation.
Welcome to Mission of Missions. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers. This is the show designed to help you grow, both professionally and personally, in the fast-paced world of higher education. Every other Tuesday, I sit down with senior leaders, new professionals, and difference makers from across higher ed and beyond, where we'll share tips and strategies related to challenging topics like student recruitment, leadership, customer service, enrollment marketing, and time management. So if you're looking for practical advice and conversations that actually move the needle, this show's for you. Grab your notepad or fire up your notes app, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and this is episode 72 of the Mission Admissions podcast. As I'm out on the road leading training workshops for admissions and enrollment marketing teams, I continue to be surprised by the number of people, especially on the admissions side and the leadership side even, who identify as introverts, including my guest today, Emily Hannon. And if you're wondering how you can embrace being an introvert in an industry like higher ed that, quite honestly, I would argue often favors extroverts, I think today is going to be super helpful for you because we're going to spend a lot of time on that, and it's something Emily is passionate about. So welcome to the show, Emily.
Hey, Jeremy. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm excited to be here.
So I thought the easiest place to start, Emily, would be like, if I said, all right, give me a definition of what makes somebody an introvert in 2025. Like, what do you think are some of the characteristics, even for yourself or just people you know that are also introverts?
Yeah, no, I've thought a lot about this, especially because I think there's this misconception around us kind of being to ourselves. I think we are energized by solitude, but we have this deep wish and want to be around people as well, especially when it comes to having deeper discussions on topics. I've had several deeper discussions with people that I don't know all that well, but it's because I'm energized or engaged by the content. So I would say that that's just a misconception. So the characteristic kind of at my forefront is just being energized by solitude and needing that downtime, especially after socializing. But we can be super thoughtful, reflective, independent, and I notice a lot of times just really observant. So hesitations and reservation to jumping into new things and new settings. But I think once we get there and we have solid ground, some of those extroverts pull us in, right? And then they start talking with us. That small talk can be a little less overwhelming, I guess.
And it's interesting you say that because as I'm listening to you talk, right, I consider myself an extrovert, but 100%. Like, I'll give you an example. I presented yesterday for 7 hours at a school. And after I'm done presenting, I absolutely don't want to talk to anybody for like the next 4 or 5 hours. Now, I don't consider myself an introvert, but maybe I should in some shape or form, right? So it's interesting how you describe that. And I think, I hear people talk a lot and they throw words out like, well, I'm shy, I'm socially anxious. Like, I feel like I have imposter syndrome. Does any of that relate to you as well, in addition to what you said?
I think the imposter syndrome, and I'll be quite frank, like I have a full list of all the questions that we were going to talk through. And I think the introvert comes out kind of in the preparation, which is, I'm sure, something we'll talk about as we kind of get through everything. So where I feel like an extrovert can kind of just hop on and talk. Or, maybe you're 7 hours at a high school, you can just kind of like get into your rhythm and there's not, and maybe there is a lot of prep to it, but just kind of having everything written down and having something to refer to has helped me a lot with kind of that initial like jumping into something new or being in a newer setting and kind of having something to refer back to. So I would say yes, but also like really definitely needing that energy to kind of rebuild in those solitude moments.
So let's kind of start then at the beginning because you've been in higher ed a number of years. You
Hmm.
recently transitioned into the leadership position. Like, as an introvert, when you started, because I know a lot of people listening to this will probably be in their first year, maybe even two, and they identify with a lot of the stuff you're talking about. Like, what were some of those things that you feel like, looking back, I kind of really struggle with these? And it probably in part was because I was an introvert and I didn't really have, I'll say, a strategy as to like, how do I then deal with certain situations, for example?
Yeah. I would say on kind of the recruiting side, one of the largest things that I always saw as such a hurdle, I don't see it as much anymore, is just opening up my phone and calling a student, which is funny because I think students probably feel the same way, right? Somebody brand new is calling them. So that was one of the things that I absolutely struggled with early on. And it took me probably 2, 3, 4 years in order to be able to just be like, it's okay. I can pick up the phone, I can dial a random number, and I can have a conversation. And I think that that kind of just evolved over time with my level of confidence in what I was, quote unquote, selling. We always say that this is a sales job, but it's also making sure that it's the right fit. So I think a lot of it just came with confidence of just really understanding that the students in the same boat, that we're all experiencing this together, and kind of just bringing out my introvert, or taking out the introvert and bringing out the extrovert, to just let the student know it's okay, like it's okay to ask me questions that you're unsure of, and I'm right there with you. I can kind of help you through the process. So not being guarded off with saying that it's okay to be um maybe a little uncomfortable too, or it's okay to not know all the right answers, and it's okay to kind of be shy, or approach a phone call from a different perspective. So that was one of my biggest struggles. And then, um, secondly, I would say early on as well, just getting to know colleagues within my department outside of my specific team, even that has evolved over time. Obviously, I've grown relationships professionally with a lot of my colleagues across different teams within enrollment management and within the university. But I would say just kind of being the one to take that first step to get to know somebody is where I really relied on the people I knew or the colleagues that were extroverted to kind of help push me along through that.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. How have those people helped you? Because again, being an introvert and being in a situation where you absolutely, whether it's on campus with colleagues, you're on the road, right at a college fair, a high school visit,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and you're around a bunch of people you don't know, and yet your job is to start conversations. Like, what were some of the things, if you think back, that were really helpful for you that got you past some of that?
Yeah, I remember one of my very first fairs. It was actually out in Storm Lake, first week of Iowa travel, and I think it was the president of Iowa ACAC at the time, Joe Slocum. He took kind of it upon himself to invite a bunch of people out to dinner after one of the fairs. I think it was during Catholic College Week when they used to have that on the western side. And it just really went a long way for me that he reached out to me to kind of invite me to do that. And I did. I took it upon myself to say, yes, I will be honest. I ended up not going. I That was the introvert in me really, struggling with that. So I definitely want to make sure that I'm being honest there. But even just saying yes and kind of working up the courage to try and do those things, um, was huge. So what really kind of shifted that was after my first year in the recruiting cycle, I had great colleagues around me that encouraged me to get involved in Iowa ACAC. At the time, the chair of the PD committee was one of my colleagues in our office. So she kind of pulled me in, introduced me to her group of people. Um, Drew from Cornell College, Connor from Buena Vista. And over time, this just kind of evolved into friendships, which for me as an introvert was more of an ambivert, but for me as an introvert was entirely more comforting and kind of getting my grounds because I love the world of higher education. I love, meeting people and having those deep conversations. But that initial start, that catalyst was somebody else kind of pulling me in. And I've had that the whole way. So if you're an introvert who's struggling, I would definitely encourage you to find somebody who is extroverted, who's involved in those things, maybe within your team or somebody that you admire. And if it's just making friends with that one person, that's going to be huge because they're going to pull you into all of those things.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Forsyth Tech was struggling to engage prospects promptly. Staff were overwhelmed and leads were slipping through the cracks. Then they brought in Element 451's Bolt agents. These AI-powered assistants stepped in to answer inquiries, send reminders, schedule visits, and route leads day or night. As a result, prospect to applicant conversion hit 25% within 3 weeks, and enrollment rose 12%. The impact? Counselors focused on high-value conversations while Bolt agents handled the rest. Fast response, higher yield, happier staff. Support your counselors with 24/7 AI teammates. Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. So then what's the balance? All right, now that you've been doing this for a handful of years, like what's the balance in terms of like, I'll say being an introvert and having to be an extrovert working in higher ed, like, is there such a thing as a balance, or is it, do you think just, it's not even that, hey, like half the time you have to be this and half the time you have to be that. And it's more just like, I'll say adjusting and adapting to different situations that you're thrown into, or like, do you feel like there are just certain times where you're like, yeah, this, like you're going to have to be way more extroverted versus this, you can be a little bit more introverted, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I lean more towards just kind of having to adjust who you are in those situations. So even our social that we have each year for Admissions Counselor University, a new counselor institute, if you will, in the state of Iowa, that's something where I always have to gear myself up mentally to approach somebody new. But it's been helpful to know that these are all people that have the same interest as I do. So even if it's just talking higher education admissions with them, the small talk can be really hard for me, but I've definitely gotten better with that. And over the years, just having, 1, 2, or 3 things that you could ask somebody new will be helpful as an introvert. Just knowing, okay, these are 3 things that I can ask that are, more personal, that aren't tied to the job. So I would say just kind of knowing your setting, especially when it comes to maybe being in front of a group that you don't know and presenting for the first time, or being on a virtual information session, just kind of being able to step out of that a little bit into a different role, if you will, just kind of like you have to do with a lot of other things. So ultimately, that would just kind of be where I'm at, is you do have to shift gears a little bit. I still don't lose the sense of my introversion. I still am far more modest when it comes to, who I am and my achievements. I'm far more introverted when it comes to boasting about myself or talking about topics that I'm a little leery of. But when I know the content and I can really dive deep into it, I do see that extroversion coming out, or that interest in the material coming out, and that excitement, which is far more extroverted. Something that, I think I've learned over time too, because I was in sales before this. I worked in retail for maybe 5 to 7 years before starting in college admission. One of the things that I learned was just really being able to mirror the person that I'm around. So even though my energy level might be lower, if I have somebody that comes in, you have those very large life dads that are excited to be on a college campus again, or somebody who's just really excited about something that maybe I'm not quite, just really being able to match their energy. And that always helps me too. So I I like that I have the flexibility to lay back a little bit when it's somebody that's a little bit more reserved like me, and then kind of re-engage that extroversion when it's somebody who's a little bit more large life.
Well, and I love that you hit on that, because one of the things I wrote down as we're talking there is just like the importance of approaching conversations differently. For example, when you're talking to prospective students and or like their family members and parents, when it's clear the other person's an introvert versus an extrovert, right? And like it's the same but different, like with your colleagues, as you've talked about earlier. But I do think it's important to understand that like you do in some regards have to match the other person's, I'll say, energy level.
Mhm.
um, and the other thing that you hit on there that I would love to dig into a little more, Emily, is you've talked about confidence. You use that term, I have to gear myself up, right, for some of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I believe confidence is a skill that like all of us have to intentionally develop. And I think some of what we get our confidence from absolutely comes from just experience, right? The more we experience things, the more we feel comfortable like talking about things. I also think confidence comes like in our preparation, right? Like if we're unprepared, we're probably going to be less confident when we're doing anything versus if we're prepared. So like, what are some of the things then, if you can kind of even dig into it more for the audience, that like you really do to gear yourself up, for example, when you know, oh, I have to go to this conference, oh, I have to go put myself in a situation that it's not that I don't want to be in it, but like I'm not fully comfortable. So like, how do you get yourself in that right mindset?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you too on just coming prepared. That was one of the things that I had written down was just really making sure that if you're going to have a seat at a table, that as an introvert, it's always helped me coming prepared with notes or researching very much, beforehand. So, and I know everybody does that. So I would say kind of where I've landed is if I am going to a conference, try and have one goal, even if it's a small goal, to spend 10 minutes talking with somebody new or to add somebody on LinkedIn that you don't know from a conversation that you've had, or to go up and talk with a vendor and just get to know them a little bit more and know what they do and ask questions. That's just going to help you not only learn more about the world of higher education and how it works, but get to meet somebody new as well. So I would say start small, especially if you're on the very far end of introversion. Start small with little things like that. If you have the ability to go with a colleague, go with that colleague, but maybe branch off if you're going to the same event. Take some time to do something separate. But ultimately, what's really helped me is, and I learned it maybe 3 years ago, is the acronym Q-tip. So quit taking it personally. So for those that need to like carry a Q-tip with them, I actually have one in my drawer in my office. I think it relates to more than just kind of the tone that people can give you. But as an introvert, it's helped me a lot with quit taking it personally, like just because I'm introverted and somebody else is extroverted, or somebody said something one way, and maybe they didn't mean it that way. The introvert in me is always thinking about the lack of confidence there. And, how could I do it differently? Or, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? So I know I'm kind of getting a little off topic here, but Q-tip is huge for me, whether you're at a conference or day-to-day interactions with your colleagues. Just quit taking things personally, truly. And I think that's helped me kind of gain the confidence to, hey, it's okay. I'm doing the same thing that somebody else is doing. Sometimes I'm going to send a message without an exclamation point, but it has no meaning behind it, which I'm sure there are people out there that are in the same boat as me on those things.
Do you have anything specific that you do when it's just you in front of a group? And the group could be 5 people, Emily. It could be like 105 people. Specifically, when it's students, that you would say, okay, so I do it differently because it's students versus like if I was in a social setting with people my age, or like if I was at a leadership conference, I might do it differently? Or is it really, no, I have that same acronym in the back of my head and I do pretty much a lot of the same of what we talked about?
Yeah, I would say I definitely feel more comfortable in a room of students because again, I do feel more like the adult in that situation specifically where, my knowledge is in most cases the knowledge that they're looking up to. So it helps me be a little bit more comfortable with the content and still deliver it in a way that is digestible for the student. So I do change how I present, especially based on audience, really making sure that I'm using words that students can understand. But from a perspective of presenting, I do try to be as relatable as I can. And I think that just is kind of an escalation of what I would do with an individual mirroring is just making sure that I can be somebody that's approachable, somebody that they can ask questions and raise their hand at the end of it. Um, so yeah, I really do try to make sure that I'm still mirroring the group in that way, or I know who my audience is. So with students, really reiterating to them, it's okay not to know everything, and it's okay to ask questions on if you don't understand something. A lot of times I refer back to, especially with parents that are maybe first gen as well. They maybe didn't go to college, they don't understand the process. I always share with them, 8 years ago, I was in the same boat. I was learning admissions material, I was learning FAFSA for the first time, all of these nuances of higher education, and it's okay not to know. So if I'm explaining something where it's getting to the point where it's like insurance, right? When somebody's saying something really quickly to you about insurance and it's going over your head, I try to explain to them that's okay. Like it's not your job to know it all. It's my job to know that information and to make sure I'm delivering it in the best way possible for you. So if I'm saying something wrong, or if I'm saying something that's just not hitting right for you, please let me know. So I would say that that's just something that I think I do a little bit differently because as an introvert, I've really appreciated the fact that people stop when they do, the fact that people stop and make sure, hey, am I explaining this the best way for you? So that's something that I do a little bit differently. Maybe not in the middle of a presentation, but I'll kind of set that standard at the beginning. Hey, this is just a conversation, especially if it's small group. You can raise your hand, you can ask me questions, and kind of almost allowing them to show their introversion and to kind of feel okay with raising their hand and asking a question. A lot of people do that, right? Presenters will say, if you're thinking that question, there's probably 7 other people that are thinking that same question. But I just make sure to bring that to light in those presentation moments, especially when it's just students that I'm working with.
And I think doing that, my gut would tell me anyways, Emily, and tell me if you disagree. I think it's going to help you come across as more authentic with a lot of those
Mhm.
students. And I think we know how important authenticity is when it comes to, I'll say, getting and keeping the attention of another person, especially a young person, right, who doesn't know you. So
Mhm.
I would love to then know, all right, you need that space. You need to, again, recharge, rest, whatever it is after you, example, go to a conference and have to socialize, or, you have to speak all day, or
Mhm.
like, so what are some of the things after you put yourself out there where you're like, okay, so this is how I go about basically getting my mind right. So like refresh and potentially do a lot of this stuff all over again.
Yeah. No, I think that this is huge, especially for an introvert, but really for anybody that needs that time to recharge. If it's at a conference, I do try to maximize my time there simply because, my institution's, paying for that. They're footing the bill. I want to make sure that I'm maximizing my time, but also still saying yes to me. So maybe it's not, and this has helped me to reframe kind of, I'm not saying no to something, I'm saying yes to me in that moment. And it's going to help me recharge and have a more successful engagement with somebody else, somebody new. So I'm scheduling in buffer time, especially if I need to go back to the hotel, take a few minutes, do something for myself quick, and then heading back out. That's kind of some of the little things I'll do during conference. And then with networking, as I mentioned earlier, even if it's just that one goal of approaching one new person, really when you do that, focus on quality over quantity with that networking. So if it means building a deeper relationship with maybe 1 or 2 contacts instead of trying to meet 15 people to add to your LinkedIn. So that's really helped me. Um, is focusing on quality over quantity. So in large group settings, that's helped me. Is if I can just approach one table and get to know the people at that table, that's good enough for me. Is to get to know those people, and hopefully there's an extrovert at the table that can pull me in and do more things, and get to go to the socials that night. And if it means cutting out a little bit early for me, I think that's okay. Like if you're just going to a social at a conference, I think that is a huge step for an introvert. So just really making sure that you are doing those things. And if you need to leave a little bit early, fine. But if you find your way and you find your people, you may stay longer. So just kind of reframing it from saying no to something and saying yes to you. And that's helped me too with the mindset.
Yeah, I love the saying yes to you that you've hit on. I mean, we all need that time, even if we're extroverted. I know I need that time, right? Where I just get myself recharged and
Mhm.
refreshed. And so just finding something you enjoy doing, which can have nothing to do, obviously, with work or anything that you typically do in your day to day, that just, again, allows you to be in a good headspace to where you're not constantly thinking, oh my God, did I screw that conversation up earlier? Or gosh, I should have stayed longer for that. Or I like,
Mhm.
it's okay, right? It is okay. And I'm just curious, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, now that you're in a leadership role, anybody listening to this who's an introverted leader, do you think there's things that are important to be mindful of as an introverted leader as you're managing your staff that maybe are different than if you're an extroverted leader, or do you think it's kind of all the same?
Um, I definitely think they're different. And I think as a leader, you have to take on the best role and the best persona for each individual team member. So especially if you are doing a one-on-one or you're trying to coach somebody through how to do something, I think learning their style first, whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, can really help you either relate to them and say, hey, I'm an introvert as well, and here's how I get through some of those situations where I maybe need to be more extroverted. Or if you're working with an extroverted student or an extroverted person, especially one of your teammates, you might actually learn a little bit from them and kind of learn how they do things differently. So I think from just a coaching standpoint, really viewing your role as maximizing each individual person in a different way.
As we wrap up here, I'll tell you the one thing I keep coming back to that you've said a number of times is it's okay not to do it on your own, right? Like you need help. You have people who want to help you, whether they're introverted or extroverted too. Don't be afraid to lean on people when you need to lean on people, right? The last thing I do with every episode is fun rapid fire, Emily. So I'm just going to give you a handful of things and I want to get some quick feedback from you on each,
Perfect.
okay?
Yeah.
All right. Instagram or TikTok, where are we spending more time?
TikTok.
What kind of videos are we watching lately?
I was stuck on Clean Talk for a while. I have 3 cats at home, so I am stuck on Cat Talk as well. And then just by proxy, my husband's obsessed with golf. So I think my phone picks up a lot of golf stuff as well.
The algorithm is listening and watching.
Yep, the algorithm is algorithming.
You got it. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, this is a tough one. I think teleportation. That would be cool. I don't want to read people's minds. I think that as the introvert in me does not want to know what other people are thinking about me. But I would say teleportation. I think that would be cool.
Last concert you went to, what was it?
I will tell you the one that I'm going to. I'm going to Pentatonics in November. They're going to be here in the Quad Cities, and they're going to be doing their Christmas special. I'm not much of a concert goer. I'm an introvert, Jeremy. So this will be branching out for me. So that'll be fun.
Cool. I love it. Gen Z slang word you're tired of hearing. What is it?
Ooh, touch grass.
I don't know what that is.
Like go get some fresh air.
Okay.
Like
All
go
right.
outside and touch grass.
That's a new one for me. And listen, I have a Gen Z daughter at home and I think I'm up on most of it, but that's a new one for me. So
maybe that's old now. So
I couldn't tell you, maybe it is.
Or
and
Riz.
Riz, 100%. Yeah, I'm glad my daughter, bro, is the other one that drives me absolutely insane.
Yes.
That's your bro. All right. Song that you know all the words to. What is it?
Taylor Swift. Mean.
Well, we all have those songs, right, that we just listen to over and over and over again that we know the words to. And I just appreciate you being on today, Emily. I do think this is going to help a lot of people. And it is something that, as I said when we jumped on, that I continue to hear a lot as I'm having the one-on-one dialogue. And so hopefully those of you listening today were able to take a couple of things. And I just encourage you, give yourself that grace like Emily talked about, and don't feel bad if you obviously need to ask for help. It's actually, I would argue, a strength, not only for introverts, but extroverts to know when it's time to lean on people or ask for help, right? Emily, thanks again for joining me. I look forward to the next time we connect.
It was great to be here.
Thanks for listening to Mission Admissions. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's the largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.